Hello, everybody. Welcome back yet again to another developer interview here at Game Devs of Color Expo 2023. I'm your host, the Purple Sharpie, and I'm here with three different members of Dracma Studio. First, I'd love to introduce Mario, who is the co-founder, animating director, and marketing head of the studio. How are you doing, Mario?
Hi there, guys. Thank you, Sharpie. I'm doing great. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you for being here, as always. We also have Hector, who is the other co-founder, as well as the producer and project manager of the studio. How are you doing, Hector?
Hello. Doing fine, thank you. Thanks for having us here. Pleasure.
Thank you again for being here. Finally, we have Hugo, who is the creative director and game design lead for the studio. How are you doing, Hugo?
Thank you so much. I'm doing fine. To everyone for
Everyone's
having us
doing fine. Everyone's doing fine and dandy this fantastic afternoon. I have to take it back over to Mario. Would you be able to give us a few sentences just about the project we'll be talking about today? Candle Night?
Sure thing. Candle Night is basically a 2.5D action platformer in which you play as a little candle holder that has to bring back the light to its home, which happens to be an abandoned Gothic castle.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you said abandoned castle because in this interview, we're going to need something to light our way. Why don't we go ahead and run that trailer and take a look? Okay, that trailer definitely warms my little heart with excitement and fills me to the brim with heated questions that I'm going to need answered. Let's go ahead and start off with you, Mario. I would love to know more about what actually went into the idea behind the creation for Candle Night. Why is the protagonist a candle?
Well, it's basically the story about a little candle that wants to bring back the light to its home. And in a way, it's kind of like our story too as a studio, because we had to fight with a lot of different obstacles. And, you know, Candle Night, it's basically our first game that we ever made as a team. So, you know, there were a lot of obstacles or challenges that we had to face during the development of Candle Night, and basically it feels kind of like our own story that we are putting out there.
No, it's definitely a very telling and empathetic story, and I really do appreciate kind of the underdog approach that the protagonist takes towards moving forward throughout the story and just progressing through the different bosses. I actually want to kind of briefly discuss, before we go into any of the gameplay, I'd love to discuss some of the actual immediate first impressions that we get from the actual game design visually. Obviously, this game looks beautiful. You stated previously that it was 2.5, meaning that it was created in 3D and then rendered on a central axis of X and Y and I would say, platformer style, but it doesn't really touch on the depth that we experience through not only some of the advanced game mechanics inside of the game and the sounds, but just the general VFX inside of here. A really good example that I'd love to give here is when Candle Night's actually running, we see the trailing on the top of its head basically moving towards the way that it actually is, an opposite of it moving and consistently. We see on the jump frames, the standing jump frames, we see how clean the animation comes back into I would call it neutral, or, you know, case in point reset, and then moves back into the viewing of the character. Talk to me about how important some of the, I would say, the polish inside the VFX was towards telling this story.
It was very important to us to have these little details. We wanted kind of like to feel unique. We wanted to feel like the game. We wanted it to be very, very striking. We wanted the art. We had we have a huge team of artists here at Dracma that worked on the game, and I think the game reflects that, because you can see that there's a lot of detail that has gone into it. It has a lot of VFX. It has a lot of attention to detail with illumination. Obviously, since you're a candle that has a little flame on top of its head, you need a lot of detail with illumination, with visual effects and stuff like that. So we wanted to give it that unique look for the game, basically, because the main story of the game is to bring back the light to a castle, right? So obviously the illumination is key into the fabric of our game.
I want to talk a little bit more about that fabric, specifically from the aspect of game design, and I'd love to go over to Hector and Hugo for both parts of these questions, starting off with Hector. Hector, can you talk to us a little bit more about this game's engine that is being used for it?
Sure thing. We used Unreal Engine 4. We actually started all the way back in 2020. We were using 4.22, which is like a very old version. And then by the end of the development, with like NVIDIA, with all that cool tech like DLSS and whatnot, we upgraded it. And that helped us a lot, especially with what we wanted to achieve, which is, again, why we chose Unreal. First and foremost, maybe not visually, but it's like the accessibility. The idea that anyone in the team can just jump in and help. For example, Hugo could just jump in and move parameters. Like, I think this should be faster, slower. Like that was such a good idea, because we didn't really have like a bottleneck with the programming team. So that was the first reason, and the second reason was obviously we're huge fans of the lighting, and it's very unique, but it's also very flexible. We had a really awesome artist from Mexico, Guillermo. He worked on the lighting specifically. Like, we had a specific lighting artist because it's a candle. So yeah, Unreal was awesome.
Unreal has always been given its accolades just for being robust and very relatively easier to distribute and share internally engine, especially after a license has been procured. And I would actually love to talk a little bit more about the level and game design behind not exclusively the lighting, but some of the game mechanics that we see, to which I'd love to go over to Hugo. Hugo, I am a competitive fighting game player, all right? I play a lot of video games, and I play them at a very high level. And I have to say, when I played this game, I thought I was an Ultimate Marvel versus Capcom 3 immediately. Some of the mechanics that you have, in addition to the dash canceling and just the aerial slashing to basically delay your fall, made it feel absolutely seamless. So I have to talk to you. Where did you get the inspiration for some of the game mechanics that we see inside of here? And I'd love to talk a little bit more about the Ignis system inside of the game as well.
For sure. There's a lot of things, like for the fighting game mechanics, that wasn't completely intentional. Maybe it's because I spend most of my free time watching video essays about game design. And sometimes I see a lot of videos about fighting games. So I had the idea of hit stop, hit stun, knockback, and things like that. The hitboxes, obviously. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say right now, as a player, that hit stun feels so good. That hit stun feels so good. It feels so good.
I'm so glad. And so a lot of the nitty-gritty details came from that. And the game was originally a lot slower. And when I came into the engine, I started speeding up animations. Mario hated me for that at first, because I was just tweaking everything all around until it felt right to me. Initially, we wanted to do something slower, kind of like Souls-ish. But I think my main inspirations when it comes to design, or what I gravitated towards, was something more akin to Mega Man Zero. More fast-paced, maybe a bit more linear. And so everything took shape little by little. We found like the game's identity a little late into development, but once it was there, it was very easy to make the levels and the challenges.
I'd love to also discuss a little bit more in detail the Ignis system, which for those people who haven't had an opportunity to play the game, which is currently available right now on Steam and in the Epic Store under Candle Knight, the Ignis system is actually the system in which the main character, Candle Knight, can actually use to basically enhance their attacks. There are 3 specific states of being: one, which is warm, where your attack goes down but your defense goes up; ignited, which is when the bar is completely filled once, and that's the point at which your attack and your defense are similar; and then there's a blaze, which is when the bar is filled up twice, and it basically allows you to just basically be a glass cannon. Your attack is absolutely max and your defense is significantly lower. But in addition, in this state, it plays very similar to a game like Mega Man Zero, where you're able to go ahead and finish off these really, really flashy combos, but it does punish you if you get punched. Hugo, I'd love to talk about why you felt as though these 3 different states were, what type of complexity these 3 different states have on the game state, and what did you want the player to experience throughout these game states?
Sure, it's something I'm very proud of. It came from wanting to do more with fire, because Candlelight is a candle, right? We have to do something with fire. And what I thought of was of Candle Knight, because he's all metal, kind of. What if he was like a car or a machine, and he had like different gears, like switching a car? And that actually came from a Game Boy Advance game called Drill Dozer, where you literally switch gears and you go faster and you do more damage. And I experimented with that, and also because it's fire, you know, from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, fire is very cool and powerful, but it's also super dangerous. And if you play with fire, you'll get burned, right? So that's where the risk-reward aspect of it came into play. And yeah, I literally wanted the player to get all fired up, and it's like, I'm going to go through it, and it doesn't matter if I die instantly. I want to be cool and blaze through everything regardless of all danger. That's why
you definitely get the sense that as the protagonist, you're blazing through everything. But I apologize for interrupting.
No, I think I'm done with the explanation. I'm very excited about it as well.
Personally, as a fighting game player and a competitive gamer, I could literally go on for hours about that topic, and I have to cut it off because that is not all that exists on this project. I'd love to go back over to Hector and talk a little bit more about the project management side of this project. I understand that this is actually Dracma Studios' very first project, and you all have already received a majority of accolades. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what it was like receiving awards from not only things like the Tokyo Game Show, but also a multitude of awards just on the indie circuit this year?
Well, it was very humbling, but it was also kind of a relief at some point, because I mean, this game was in development throughout the pandemic, so we really went through some. I mean, everyone in the team went through some dark times, and I'm sure anyone listening, and you as well. So it was kind of a relief, I guess, like seeing that the hard work paid off, at least in one way or another. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Going to Japan was an experience, and just kind of showing off the game and seeing how people interacted with it, and just kind of trying to break into that market. So that was a lot of fun.
Mario, same question to you. What was your experience upon the reception of the game's release?
Well, it was very tense for us, because it was our first game being launched ever, and it was something. It was a very new experience to us, seeing the reception of the game. You know, most of them were positive. We got a lot of feedback from a lot of people. You know, Candlelight was featured in some articles online, so that was very good. And you know, the awards, as Hector was saying, that it felt really good that the work that we've put in to the game was being recognized by some people, because at some points it felt like, okay, we're doing this, but it feels weird. We don't know if it's like doing great or how it's going for us. So when we started to get that outside recognition, you know, we won an Epic Mega Grant. We were in the Tokyo Game Show from 2022 at the Indie Expo, at the indie section of the Expo, and that was amazing for us because it really opened doors for us. We got a lot of attention, like nationally here in Mexico, and locally from our state, and you know, from outside too. And it was really humbling to put it bluntly, basically.
Now, I have to apologize yet again because I promised I wouldn't expand on it, but I lied. I have to expand on it. Hugo, my final question here is, can you please talk to me about one of your favorite bosses or enemies inside of the game thus far, and where the inspiration from that enemy or boss came from?
Okay, let me think of it. I think for sure is the Automata King. I believe it's displayed in the trailer, like this huge, like mechanical clockwork king. And because I believed it wouldn't make it with our tight schedule and how complicated it is. Like you go up like a spiral around him, and then there are these like puzzle segments where you have to enter into paintings to distract him. It was super technical and very hard to describe to the programmers in a way that would just work. We had to do a lot of tweaking, and we were under a lot of pressure to get it right. But once it was there and everything worked, I felt so proud and excited of our team, and just that we were able to get this incredible like set piece idea across, which I think is similar to some AAA games in a way. That was incredible for me.
To be very honest, and just as a final word here to everyone on the team, Mario, Hugo, and Hector, when I was reviewing this game, this is actually one of the very first games that I've ever had the opportunity to experience this year at this expo that I actually believed was not indie. I actually had believed that this was a AAA game. So absolute kudos to the polish, the brevity, and the success that your game has received. It is very, very well earned. So personal congratulations to that. I'd also like to thank all three of you, Mario, Hector, Hugo, for speaking with me today regarding Candle Night. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Sharpie, and you know, thank you for your kind words. We really appreciate them.
With that being said, we have come to the finale of this interview. I'd love to thank all three of you, Mario, Hector, and Hugo, for taking time today to discuss with me Candle Night. Thank you again.
Thanks to you, Sharpie, and thank you for your kind words. We really appreciate them.
I appreciate you all. And audience, if you appreciate this interview, make sure that you not only purchase Candle Night currently in Steam and the Epic Game Store, but also make sure that you follow Dracma Studios on twitter.com, otherwise known as X. That's going to do it for this developer interview, but I'd love to see you tune in for even more Game Devs of Color Expo 2023 coming up right now.